First thing I want to talk about is, for me and probably a lot of other people, you're the definitive Deathstroke. So what's it like, having created and probably embodying a iconic role?
Well, I like to think about the character being like the mask. That there's a gold and there's a black, or there's these two sides that represent light and dark. Because every human being has to struggle with these two forces as we go through life. Nothing's always easy and nothing's always happy. We have to find a way to have a morality in the middle somewhere. Sometimes we can only see out of one eye. This is the whole thing about Deathstroke. And, I just tried to invest my emotional content to the character to mirror this, And, as an actor, I had a lot of struggles when I was younger, losing a mother and a brother. So my life has been that kind of a struggle to understand how to find the joy when there's constant reminders of such loss, And I think any artist who really maybe not earns but understands the work, the work potential, will take life experience and put it there, whether it be on a painting or whether it be on a piano or whether it be through a role. So, I just try to work as an energy that opens up when the director says action. And try to send that signal through that little thing you're watching at home. Yeah.
It sounds like there's a lot of yourself in the character. Would you say that's true?
Well, there's a lot of other people as well, because I'm really living in the world, and kind of have to take on board. One thing that I love about the Comic-Cons is that it's allowed me to travel the world and kind of, but in saying that, I believe we're all just a bunch of bones and flesh and water, and we all are born and suckle to our mother, and then look up to our father, and then have a brother and sister, and then make friends, and then go get educated, and then enter a system and get a job, and work hard and hope there's not going to be a war, and build a house and live in it, and find a love and have kids of our own and try to tell them about the way we were taught, and then hopefully by the time we suddenly realize that we get a diagnosis that we're not going to be around for much longer, we can say it was a life worth living and something we've fulfilled. So I don't know, and in the middle of all of that is the way we connect, and I strongly believe that story, and especially what we have as an opportunity, especially on film and television these days, where it can be streamed immediately around the world. Material can be absorbed by any person on the planet. That the information, the things that we receive. Artists have this wonderful opportunity. And we have this responsibility as well to contribute to society. From a perspective of holding a mirror up, and this doesn't exist in politics necessarily these days, So I think the artist has even more of a responsibility to take up. It's wonderful to see that like Netflix is here in Denmark, and they've got a new series called Rain, which is about a young group of teenagers trying to survive after an apocalyptic war, which is so in the minds of everybody on the planet now, So we have to look at, potentially this story is talking about what we might have to look at in the future. How do we feel about that? So good on Denmark for coming up with the concept, and good on Netflix for moving outside of the American productions into producing something out of Denmark.
So, you talk a lot about at this point in time a global responsibility as an actor, and you're known for playing a lot of intimidating, quite gruff guys.
Well, struggling characters, I think the first thing that comes to mind when people think about Slade Wilson is that, but like Marv Wolfman created the character. As I said to you, this mask of his is the metaphor of what Slade or Deathstroke is. A man struggling to find some kind of morality in this violent world. Crixus was the same sort of character. You say, what do I put myself into roles? I love the responsibility of playing that kind of a role because most young men caught with that mask. A lot of people in the world feel kind of like Crixus, like squashed into a cage, and how do you get out? How do you find freedom? How do you find in the middle of your struggle? How do you look between the bars of society and find a female force that you can put your fingers through and touch fingers and start to feel love in this world? I mean, there's more divorce rates than marriage rates at this stage, I think, and there's so many things that are complex and I don't know. As an artist, I'm still trying to find for those solutions, and some of the roles that I've played have maybe helped me kind of realize the struggles within myself, as much as trying to project something that could be going through that screen in somebody's house to give them a kind of a feeling of what's the emotional struggle of this character? Do I identify with it? Because that's what the audience sort of does. They end up sort of being embodying your performance as well,
So, have you ever considered playing a classically heroic character, or do you think that your, more grey, shaded character are more interesting to play?
I don't know, brother. It's like a kind of a casting process, that goes on for projects. You can end up being sort of, the thing I'm trying to fight is stereotype, probably my two most well-known roles, or three, Arzog, Slade Wilson, Deathstroke, and Crixus, are probably regarded as being violent, but then you have to look at stereotype, I mean, in all three of these projects, the protagonist is a blonde-haired, blue-eyed person, and I'm playing the sidekick who's not as heroic or not the hero of society, and this is stereotype, you understand? Yeah, and when you have this kind of continual role of this is the hero, and they represent either America or whatever it is that is the culture that they, and the next person is here. You see, there's got to be a balancing of that. We have to start making shows, out of America or around the world where, I think Idris Elba is a wonderful example today, where an African man, living in London, has been given the opportunity to play heroic roles. But there's Mexican, there's Hispanic, there's Eastern European, there's all these different cultures that really just don't have a voice as that heroic role, and maybe one day I'll get the opportunity, brother. But I tell you right now, it's like I'm sort of a little bit stereotyped into certain things, but who knows? Maybe I'll come up with a Polynesian story of Coupe or something, and I'll get a chance to play something that fits into my reality.
Yeah, but I mean, until that point comes, which hopefully is pretty soon, do you have any wish of returning as Deathstroke?
Oh, look, I mean, I think we've got a great formula working in Arrow, where the return of Slade to Oliver's world is always sort of goes all the way back to the origins. It's like having a Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker kind of a thing. Father son. Slade was kind of like a father figure to Oliver, and but it's been cleverly mapped out. I mean, we had this kind of like crisis that was almost Shakespearean in the way that the Slade's character, it was like Othello with Iago whispering in his ear, having the character of Shadow like in this sort of almost sort of telling him what to do kind of thing, So I think the audience always remained thinking like, what happened to Slade? You know, what happened to the initial character? Like some sort of addiction. The Mirakuru was some sort of like drug addiction or alcohol or something like this. So when he stepped out of the prison in Series 6, well, the end of Series 5, and said to Oliver, "Kid, I remember everything that happened. The Mirakuru's worn off. Where do we go from here?" And Oliver says, "I need you to help me find, you know, I've found your son and I need you to help me find my," you know, there's this kind of two fathers, two sons, and they changed the whole nature of where Slade and Oliver were at again, you know. And I think the audience, you know, appreciated it and enjoyed it, you know. And so, you know, they dropped a couple of things into the storyline, you know, like the fact that Slade has two sons. You know, they not only brought Joe back, but they mentioned, "Oh, you have another son as well." Exactly. So, you know, I personally, you know, why would they say that if they had nowhere to go with the storyline? But, you know, I think right now Warner Brothers is concentrating on the film, you know, the Deathstroke film. Joe Manganiello, I hope he does a wonderful job. You know, I mean, I hope I can go sit in the Deathstroke movie and be you know.
And do you have any advice for him?
Oh no. Look, I mean, at the end of the day, I believe Slade's complexity is all about the grey matter. You know, the bit between the gold and the black, the bit where he's fighting in between the little world that exists in the middle of that mask, the line. You know, how do you cross the line that way, or did you come back that way? You know, the line is the most important thing about that mask. You know, so you know how Joe goes about you know, digging deep and finding the complexity of Slade. That's probably, you know, going to be the interesting thing for me to even watch. But you know, I've met Joe, and Joe's is a you know, really wonderful guy with you know, he's done all his work in Hollywood to get an opportunity. Many people have worn Batman's mask, so you know, it's somebody else putting on the Deathstroke mask, and I wish him the best. Yeah.
So, I mean, you've been to a lot of conventions. I think that's fair to say. How would you say this convention and the Scandinavian crowd has been so far?
Well, you know, I mean, it's like giving something a rating, and you know, it's only important that you know, you understand that Comic-Cons kind of offer a kind of modern mythology. You know, young people are watching and trying to absorb from the screen stories that seem important, that seem relevant to now. You know, I mean, we're waging wars all over the planet based upon pieces of scripture and things that were written 2,000 years ago. You know, and those things were written at that time. You know, the good writers of today are capturing modern mythology in a way where people can look and see the ways that a Marv Wolfman character or a Stan Lee character, hero or villain, act, or just like how we'd expect like the Minotaur, or like Jason and the Argonauts, or Jesus, or any of these stories that are embodied with the idea of trying to share a goodness, or you know, or there's an evil over here, or there's something like this. These are just archetypal patterns in human storytelling, you know. But Comic-Cons are popular because they are the modern mythology, you know. They're what young people are watching and absorbing and trying to relate their position in this world based upon these stories that are more about the modern and contemporary situations.
Yes. So here at the end, is there anything you would like to tell to your fans directly to the camera?
Oh no, just, you know, I thank you, Comic-Con here in Denmark, for having me in Copenhagen. Every new city that I go to, every new culture that I meet is another step in understanding this thing that we all live on. You know, it's only one thing, you know, and so many divisions. You know, so hopefully, you know, I believe that film and television have a responsibility and a great opportunity to sort of, you know, collaborate and bring people together. Yeah.